Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to some British Grand Prix race reaction. Oh, that was boring. Nothing to talk about. We'll end it there. Probably safest after all. I'm going to be joined by Stuart shortly to talk about a very dramatic, controversial British Grand Prix. I feel like this is our, what should we say, Senna Prost moment maybe of 2021 or Schumacher Villeneuve. Bit early in the season to be talking about titles just yet, I guess, but what a race. Unbelievable. Even forgetting what happened on the opening lap. Some really good battling. I really enjoyed that one, but I think we're going to have quite a divisive stream. Just a quick disclaimer. I've said it to people in chat. I'll add it for the comments as well, but this channel has always been about opinions. I'll give mine, Stuart will give his, you guys will all get yours. I'll shout some comments out as well throughout the stream. I'm sure we'll get some super chats to read out as well. No problem with people expressing their opinions. Just keep it respectful. There's no need for some of the toxicity that I've seen. Not so much in the chat so far. That won't last, but particularly over on Twitter at the minute, it's just absolutely pathetic, quite frankly. So, yeah, let's try and be respectful. That's my dad moment out of the way. Okay, so behave, because I'm not having it. Let's have a look at the race result before we get to Stuart. Oh, it's baking in the UK today. Yes, I know, there are countries hotter than here, but, you know, it's really hot today. Stuck in here as the PC throws some hot air at my legs. Wonderful. Lewis Hamilton won the British Grand Prix. That does not tell anywhere near the full story. Charles Leclerc, second place, 3.8 seconds behind. Fantastic drive from him today. Valtteri Bottas, bit of an anonymous race, maybe. I don't know, 11.1 seconds behind in the end. Lando Norris, fourth place, just missed out on that podium. Fifth for Daniel Ricciardo, much better weekend for him. Carlos Sainz in sixth. Fernando Alonso in seventh place. He is absolutely, he's impressed me so much this weekend, Fernando Alonso. It shouldn't surprise us, should it? Lance Stroll, 8th. Esteban Ocon, 9th. Yuki Tsunoda grabbing a point for AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly, late puncture, scuppered his race, really. 11th place. George Russell, 12th. I think a good weekend for Williams overall. Antonio Giovinazzi, 13th. Nicholas Latifi in 14th. Kimi Raikkonen, 15th. Late incident with Perez. Perez down in 16th place. I actually think, by the way, super quickly, great call from Red Bull to try and snatch that fastest lap away, and they did. 17th for Nikita Mazepin, who beat Mick Schumacher. Credit where it's due, chat. Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen were our two retirees. Yes, what a race. Good evening, Stuart. Sorry we're a little bit late. 10 minutes later than usual. Good evening. That was all right, wasn't it? I quite enjoyed that.
Shame nothing happened, but here we are. I'm sure we can find something to talk about.
Yeah, there'll be plenty to talk about. I mean, we'll have to start with the big controversial incident, of course. Vettel spin on the first lap. I mean, what an idiot. What's he doing? What's that about?
Honestly, I'm rooting for Vettel at the moment. He's had a real turnaround in form, and then just that happens on lap one. What are we going to do with him?
I know, terrible. I mean, we can talk about the other one if you want. Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton. It is the only place to start. We usually do the top three, but we've got to start here. It's causing divide, I think, is this maybe the polite thing to say on social media at the moment, Stuart. It definitely is. If you didn't catch it, of course, if you're in chat, I'm sure most of you did. Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen came to blows at cops. Max Verstappen in a massive accident as well. He is okay, is how I understand it. He's been taken for precautionary checks at a local hospital. Was a bit dizzy. I think a CT scan, I think I saw Red Bull say as well. So, yeah, hopefully all okay. So wish Max all the best, of course. But horrible accident at cops. Most important thing is, initially he's walked away, but obviously for the championship, it's a huge dent. It's a tough one to call though, Stuart. I saw you sort of discussing it with a few people on Twitter or popping your opinion out there. It's quite hard to call this one. My gut, when I'll tell you my first impression of it before we talk about replays and analysis and that, but my first impression was penalty for Hamilton. But the more you watch of the incident, I find it harder to call, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think I'm still inside the sort of the envelope of it being a racing incident. I think there's a certain amount in the middle of the balance of whose fault it is, where you kind of call it a racing incident. I think it still sits inside of that, and I definitely was much more towards the it's Hamilton's fault side than I was now. I still would put it more towards Hamilton, but yeah, I mean, it's a complicated incident, and in reality, what it is two World Championship drivers fighting for the lead in one of the fastest corners on the track, and they're side by side, and it's marginal, and mistakes happen. There are a lot of people who think very firmly one way or the other that it's either Verstappen's fault, he's very much an idiot, or it's Hamilton's fault, he's very much an idiot. But I do just think it's two people on the very limit just happened to move towards the same amount of space. The reason I was more towards it being Hamilton is because he never really he never hit the apex, and he did drift away from the inside of the corner into Max and was never ahead of him. But this is something that happens. It's a real shame that it took Verstappen out, especially with such a big hit. But yeah, I'm not firmly in the it's one way or the other camp.
No, it is a tough one because, I mean, first of all, these are two incredibly quick, incredibly talented drivers at the top of their game, having to give it absolutely everything to beat the other, and the aggression's having to come out. We've not really seen Lewis Hamilton have to fight like this since maybe Sebastian Vettel 2017, maybe 18, but certainly since the Nico Rosberg days in 2016. And so he's having to take bigger risks. He's not going to back out of that. If that's Bottas on the outside, he backs out of it. If it's Leclerc on the outside, he backs out of it. But it's his championship rival, he's going to go for it. And Max Verstappen at the same time is not going to go, oh, off you go, Lewis, carry on, mate. He's got a championship to fight for. So it's inevitable. They're drivers who have both throughout their careers been known for being aggressive, and they've both kind of come to the same corner at the same point, and there's almost, dare I say, an inevitability there, if that makes sense. If you've got two aggressive drivers who aren't going to back out of it in a tight-ish, it is now, but it wasn't, title fight, there's likely to be contact if they're not going to give each other a bit more space. But this is where I struggle, because when you look at Hamilton's on board, Verstappen could have given him more space. You look at Verstappen's on board, Hamilton could have given Verstappen a bit more, and you just sort of think, well, can that go down as a racing incident when it's totally destroys somebody's race? But my biggest problem is, and it goes back to what me and Dan were talking about after Austria, the problem is you've set a precedent. If you're giving a penalty to Lando Norris for that move for that incident with Sergio Perez, or Perez for the one on Leclerc, you've got to give something for that. You can't not. The George Russell one with Sainz yesterday, 3-place grid drop. How can you not give a penalty? It kind of feels like they've almost backed themselves into a corner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like they've set precedent. They have established what the rules of combat are, at least for this season, and sort of drifting wide into your opponent and knocking them off is a time penalty. I definitely don't think it was a race ban. I know it resulted in a very heavy hit, and a lot of people are like, that's incredibly dangerous. But we have seen passes around that corner before, and we're talking about two people fighting for the championship. What I've been saying for quite a while, actually, is it's been a joy to watch the two people fighting at the top actually fighting on track fairly regularly, because I think we've seen a lot of championships where the two rivals don't often meet that often, but actually we're seeing them fight for position on a fairly regular basis and fairly cleanly, not 100% cleanly, but fairly cleanly. And I think this was bound to happen at some point. And especially after yesterday, I mean, this is the first time we've had a race where we've had like a little taster of a race the day before. And I think what Hamilton would have learned is if he didn't get ahead on lap one, it would be very difficult to get ahead later in the race, at least until, the pit stop phases, because he didn't look like he was challenging Verstappen at all through the sprint race after lap one. Exciting lap ones on both occasions, but I think Lewis learned he had to just go for it and really, really try and get it. And I think he made the wrong call at Copse, but we always have to remember they are making split-second decisions at hundreds of kilometers an hour, and they can't do the levels of analysis and afterthought that we're able to do with replays and such. So we have to take that into account as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't get this. I've got to say, I don't buy this. You don't overtake at Copse. We've seen some crack. We've seen Alonso Raikkonen side by side through Eau Rouge, for God's sake. You can overtake in Copse. We've seen plenty of moves there. So to say that Verstappen should have not defended like that, he should have dropped behind, or that Hamilton shouldn't have gone for the move, of course the moves can happen there. Maybe, with hindsight, maybe he might have backed out of that. Hindsight's a wonderful thing and all that. But you've got to go for moves in the championship, especially like when it comes to Hamilton. I'm not defending him on that move or either way, but he's a long way behind Verstappen in the championship ahead of today. He lost out in the sprint yesterday. You've touched on it there. Hamilton knows that if he gets in front, it's going to be tough for Max to get past him because of the straight line speed that the Mercedes has. Hamilton's not won for 5 races, so he's kind of got to take a chance at that point. So I'm not going to have a go at any driver who has a go or goes for an opportunity and tries something. But at the same time, I think, first lap, the experience he's got in title fights, you think he'd maybe just have let that one go. He's got the straight line speed, have a go down to Stowe. Again, hindsight's 2020 and all of that. I've seen Max's tweet, I'll do it in a minute, but hindsight's 2020 and all of that. If you have to blame somebody, I think the stewards were always going to have to put that on Hamilton, like I say, because of what was done in Austria. And, 3-place grid drop for George Russell for that incident with Carlos Sainz. You compare it to that 10-second time penalty, actually seems something lenient, something harsh. I would maybe argue feels about right. Maybe could have gone as far as a drive-through. I don't think you're talking stop-go penalty levels, but it feels, if it had been 5-second penalty, I'd have a very different opinion. I can assure you of that, because that's not enough for that. But 10 feels about right to you, Stuart, or would you have gone harsher, softer, or just let them race?
I think the interesting thing is that if you watch the reactions to people's penalties, some people thought it was really harsh and some people thought it was very lenient. So perhaps it is correct on balance. I think, in Austria, we had people run wide with maybe not similar maneuvers. I mean, it was a very different type of corner and there were 5-second penalties given out there. I'd say it was a more dangerous corner, and obviously they punted someone into retirement in this case. So, more than 5 seconds seems about right. I think if they'd have given a drive-through, I wouldn't have been surprised. I'm going to shut my window if you can hear that. Sorry about that. But I mean, yeah, probably about right. Maybe, yes, I think it's about right. But between this and a drive-through, I think that would have made sense. I think Helmut Marko's talk of race bans is way too much, and that's just Marko being Marko, isn't it?
Well, he's just... It's not the same level of incident, of course it isn't, and I'm not claiming that before anybody starts, but the amount of incidents Max Verstappen's been involved in through his career, just like Lewis Hamilton, and I don't tend to hear that from Helmut Marko about Max, but I mean, again, nothing quite to that extent, has there? But that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, a pretty hefty one in Monaco early in his career, but he definitely came off worse there, didn't he? So, but Helmut Marko. Some people will take his opinion and what he thinks like he's some sort of god. I just think that as much as I want to respect him, he's a bit of an idiot with what he says. Sometimes he will do anything to defend Max Verstappen. Shame he doesn't have that about his other drivers. On the subject of Max, he has put out an Instagram post. Some people point in the tweet, but he put out an Instagram post. Said, first of all, I'm glad I'm okay. It was quite an impact at 51G. But feeling better. Obviously very disappointed with being taken out like this. The penalty given does not help us in any way and doesn't do justice to the dangerous move Lewis made on track. Watching the celebrations after the race while still in hospital is disrespectful and unsportsmanlike behaviour, but we move. That's from Max Verstappen. Strong words, I'd say, for an Instagram post there. But understandably, I'd like to try and keep his family friendly, but understandably a little bit pissed off. I think I would be as well, but dangerous, unsportsmanlike. I've seen people saying cheat. It's trending on Twitter, but I don't think that's... if you're watching that again and Hamilton turns to the left deliberately and swings into him, that's cheating. I'm a Michael Schumacher fanboy, massive one. But, turning in on a driver on the inside and going, I didn't see him, didn't realise he was there, and taking yourself out of a race, or similar with Damon Hill, that's a bit more cheaty than that. That, to me, is closer to a racing incident than cheating by a long way. But, I'm... Racing incident, but... if there has to be blame, which I think the stewards kind of had to, they put themselves in that corner, as we said, then I'm going to have to say Hamilton. But 10 seconds feels about right to me. I don't get why people are saying it should be 5 and some saying he should be race banned. I mean, I know social media is often split down the middle of things and we tend to get one extreme to the next, but it's crazy that some are sort of going, oh no, it's fine, let him off, and then others are going, suspend him forever, he should be put in prison. It's attempted murder is the best one I've seen. Fucking hell.
Oh God, yeah, come on.
Phil B, thank you very much for your contribution, mate. Said, my God, people could be toxic. It's a racing incident. Get over it. Jeez. Raza says, Euro 2020, Italy takes it from Britain with penalties. Silverstone 2021, Britain takes it from Italy with penalties. What a race. Very enjoyable. Is that Crofty's burner account, Raz? Thank you very much, mate. Robbie says, not to be dramatic, but this was a poor day for the sport. The man who won the race was responsible for putting out the leader 10 seconds is pathetic. Parker says, I think it's a racing incident. But I think the penalty was deserved and appropriate in the end. That's kind of where I'm at, to be honest with it. 100 kilograms of fuel on board was going to always understeer with that tight of a corner entry. Of course, missing that apex quite a bit, actually, but thank you very much, Parker. Robbie Graniani says, no matter who was to blame, this was always going to happen between these two. I think you're right there. They both want it so badly it will happen, or probably happen again. Thank you as well to Messmeister. Says, hi, Sean. I can see the argument for racing incident, but Hamilton made a mistake that put another driver in hospital. That alone warrants a penalty, and this was too light. Kimi got a 10-second stop going 2018 for much less. That's true. We've seen penalties. I'll be honest, Messmeister, super quickly, I wouldn't look for consistency in penalty decisions from the past or right now, because I don't think the stewards know half the time, to be honest. And thank you very much. He's here once again. Charles Edward Ruddy Cheese, thank you so much, mate, for that incredible contribution. Says, wow, just wow, typical Brit, nothing wrong with all that cheating. Lol, I think that's a lol. Sir Hammer is a bully masquerading as a humble servant. Epic race, Max is a bit too hot-headed, man. In the lead of the championship to come across like that. I don't know, guys. Why are we changing the regulations right now? Many teams can store podiums and two can fight for the top step. Actually, Charles, funnily enough, I was doing the championship tables and I can't believe how many drivers are on 100 points after 10 races. I was so surprised, and Leclerc's not far behind. We've got Perez, Bottas, Norris, Hamilton, Verstappen all on 100 plus, with Perez on 104, Leclerc 80, Sainz 68, Ricciardo 50. I mean, so many points being handed out. We've only got the Williams and the Haas boys who haven't scored yet. And I think George Russell's kind of on the brink of getting it. But thank you very much for all of your contributions there. All of them massively appreciated. Of course, you know, we're not racing drivers, Stuart. I don't think either of us have pretended to. I'm pretty damn sure I wouldn't fit in a Formula One car. In fact, I know I wouldn't fit in a Formula One car. I've kind of half tried and then left with my head hanging. Very depressed, shoulders dropped. But I think, is there an argument to be had, and I'm not putting blame on him or saying he should have, but do you think there's an argument to be had that this is, and I've kind of sort of touched on it, this is when we talk about the championship fight and the experience of what Lewis Hamilton's been through over the years, is that what have we seen today? That's kind of what Max is lacking, in that if Hamilton's on the outside of Cops and Verstappen's up his inside, is he letting that go because he's got the championship to think of if he's got the 30-odd point lead?
That's an interesting question.
I don't want to be harsh on Max at all, by the way. I'm not trying to say that he should have given it up, but I'm just, maybe that's something he needs to, that will come with experience.
I'm not necessarily convinced Verstappen would let it go right now. I mean, we've seen Lewis on the outside a couple of occasions this year, and essentially Max giving him no space and Lewis having to run off the road. But I think Spain and Imola, we saw a lot of those replays as a comparison after the race. But of course, he didn't have his 33-point lead at that time. I'm not sure if I've seen Verstappen get to that point yet where he's going to surrender space on the track. And I'm not convinced if the cars were reversed in position that Verstappen would have done anything differently, to be honest. I think they both would have tried it and it would have ended up the same either way.
Yeah, like I say, not trying to say that Max should have backed out and the incident doesn't happen, but I just think, Alain Prost was always very, was the professor, wasn't he? That's what he was known as, calculated. He would sort of sit and think, right, I don't need to make that move, or I can let that driver go for the championship. And maybe that's something Max is lacking. But in some ways, I kind of like that. And it was the same with Hamilton when he was younger. Maybe he's not as a great, I think Bernie Eccleston said it this week, he's not the fighter he once was. I wouldn't word it like that, but we've seen today he'll fight, but maybe not as aggressive as he was when he was younger. But I like that drivers have that, this is my position, mate, you're not having it. But at the same time, that's going to guarantee contact, isn't it? I just think, from a steward's point of view, they put themselves in a crap position. They were always going to have to give a penalty for that. There was nothing, you can't have penalties for drivers being pushed wide and putting a couple of wheels on the gravel and then let that go. But I think the comment, I just go out to that super chat, it kind of sums up what I'm thinking very much. Where is it? Racing incident, but the penalty was deserved and appropriate in the end from Parker. I kind of agree with that one. But look, whatever I say here, I'm wrong. Whatever everyone in chat says, they'll have their own opinion, they're wrong. Not from my point of view, but I will just throw this to you super quickly, actually. Chat. One surname or the words racing incident or just RI, whatever you want to put. Is that Hamilton? Is it Verstappen to blame? Or is it a racing incident? Let me know in chat. Sorry, Mod, you can let all these fly through. Don't even try to moderate this. So don't go being horrible. I think we're kind of...
I think while you let the names run through, I think just to add a little bit of context to what Max said in his tweet, I think, wow. I think we need to be clear that Hamilton didn't know that he was in hospital checks until later after all the celebrations. I don't think he was sort of celebrating knowing that his rival was potentially hurt. Hamilton was told about that later on in an interview after all the podiums and stuff. Just thought I'd let that know. Also, Max said the penalty doesn't help them at all, but as we know, penalties are not designed to help the aggrieved person, and they never have been. Otherwise, people would be given grid unpenalties.
I love that idea. A grid unpenalty. Carlos Sainz starts 5th today or something like that. That's that's going to cause some confusion. It is a tough one. I think looking at the chat, I'm not going to read names out. We'll do that when we get to driver day, I promise. But I think there's a lot of racing incident, but there's a lot more Hamilton than there is Verstappen. So I think we seem to be, weirdly, somewhere along the same lines as a group, as a collective, that racing incident, but if a penalty's got to be given, which it had to be really, it had to go to Hamilton because... I mean, what can Verstappen do there? Drive straight off the track? I mean, there was a lot of space on the outside, but he's... I don't know. We've seen moves in cops before that have come off that are very similar to that and haven't been contacted. But a few people saying, 100 kilos of fuel, heavy cars, cold tyres, colder brakes than maybe they'd like. Going into that, well, not breaking that corner so much, are they? But drifting wide, bit of understeer. I don't know. He's definitely not hit the apex. There's no doubt about that. He's nowhere near it. I mean, I get close to that on F1 2021 and I'm terrible. I can't hit an apex for my life unless it's in Tesco car park. But yeah, we'll probably discuss this a bit more later as well because there's quite a bit we want to talk about this weekend. But we will start to shoot through the order. So we'll come back to this and we'll take some more of your comments. If you've got any more questions, comments, super chats that come in that are related to this, we'll go back to it because I think this is the big talking point of the race, definitely. So I'll do the last few on here as well. Raz, once again, thank you very much, mate. Says fans either want close, competitive, cutthroat racing or they want risk-averse, penalty-driven racing. You cannot have both, and you can't flip-flop complain when you get one or the other. Convenience theory at its finest. Oh, Raz. Sean with his rose-tinted spectacles here been like, we wouldn't have had all this in my day. Yeah, we did. Penalties not so much. You seem to get away with more, didn't you? So, and why did Lewis not get any penalty points for that, but George got one yesterday? Should he have gotten some because they gave him 10 seconds? That's from M Toppy. He did get penalty points. I think I saw that just as we went live. He got two penalty points. So, but they don't announce them in the race. They tend to come afterwards. And thank you as well to Bryce, who said, I understand both racing incident and Hamilton blame, but for people saying Verstappen should be penalised, were you watching the same race as us? I don't think Verstappen should be penalised for that. There you go. What can you say? And Jamie Santos as well says, hope all is well, Sean. I will say objectively that it was between a 10-second leaning towards a drive-through. Lewis completely misses the apex, and that is the deciding factor. Lewis is lucky to have not taken both, and it's similar to he did in 2016. Thank you very much for that. Awesome contribution, mate. Massively appreciated. We'll go on to Charles Leclerc, because I think he's the big talking point as well. What a race! What's up with Ferrari this year? I'm so impressed with the lad today. I'm not going to lie, I'm gutted. I'm not a Leclerc super fan and a Hamilton hater or anything like that, but I really wanted him to get that because he capitalised on the incident at the front. He got the move done. He drove superbly all race, led for, you think you'd say every lap, wouldn't you really? So led for every lap. And I think I've seen a lot of memes on social media lately that Leclerc's dusted, and I'm just like, yeah. Go on, boy. Show them they're talking rubbish. So really impressed with him today. Apparently Ferrari, it started to struggle on the harder tyres, which is a shame. And obviously Hamilton was out for victory today, wasn't he, in front of the home fans? So kind of a shame, but it's disappointing you couldn't get the win, but it's hard to be overly disappointed with that weekend for Ferrari.
No, it was a solid effort. I was actually amazed that they are still behind McLaren after this weekend. I thought they were closer than that going into it. I guess that win would have done them a lot of good. But really, just solid weekend for Ferrari, and that battle between them and McLaren is still one of the hottest parts of this year. Just like you, I'm just so impressed with Leclerc. Like, it wasn't until that final part of the last stint when it was sort of game on for Lewis. Otherwise, Leclerc just seemed to be in control, didn't he? He didn't seem worried about losing the lead through any of the first 3 quarters of the race.
We looked kind of unstoppable, didn't he? I thought he got it when he came out after the pit stops and he was 9 seconds up the road. I thought, well, he's got this. It's done. He's won it, but wasn't to be. But I just think he was. I can't really think of anything negative. Which I don't have to always go to a negative, of course, but I can't think of anything bad that happened for him. I think the whole weekend was pretty stellar, and obviously the move with Hamilton getting up the inside at Copse, showing you can make moves on the inside of Copse. But anyway, got the moves on the inside of Copse. I think I saw somebody on Twitter say it was always going to be Copse. It had to be Copse. But I think he put up a fight around the outside, but obviously went wide and bailed out of that one. But yeah, I can't think of anything bad. Sorry.
No, and I think Ferrari and McLaren both, they are most poised to take advantage of things like this happening to the top drivers, and he came within a hair's breadth of grabbing a win. And I sort of spent a lot of time saying I think McLaren are going to get a win this year. I think McLaren are going to get a win, but forgetting that Ferrari equally poised to pull out results like this, and I don't think this will be the last one we see.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it, to see them both, Ferrari and McLaren, pick up a win this year. But I think you're spot on there. I think they've got a great shot, and I think McLaren have as well. I've not got anything much to say on Leclerc. I feel really bad because he had such a good drive, but I don't want to sit here for 10 minutes just saying, what a drive. He had a great drive, fantastic drive, because he just sort of got on with it, didn't he? Like I say, took that lead and then didn't really look back until the last couple of laps. Like I say, 9 seconds after the pit stop. Pit stop was fine. Would have been a bit nervous after what happened to Carlos Sainz, but I think just a superb drive from him. And like I say, I think there'll be some disappointment there. I've not caught his post-race interview. I think there will be some disappointment because he was so close to the win. Kind of a bit like Austria 2019, led all race and then snatched away at the end. But Ferrari know they're not competing with Mercedes really on pace. They know that car, Hamilton at the wheel, is going to be insanely quick, and there's no point really risking that. And in that fight with McLaren, 18 points could be massive. So I think, yeah, just great drive, and thoroughly deserving as well of driver of the day. I don't often agree with the fan driver of the day, but I absolutely do with that one. So superb from Charles. Valtteri Bottas, I said at the start, a bit of an anonymous race. I don't really know what to say. He just he started third, he finished third, did have to jump out of the way for Lewis Hamilton, which was the right thing to do in terms of team strategy. They wanted to win that race. He was much quicker with Hamilton, so they had to swap them. But sort of it kind of lonely in a way. I mean, it wasn't that far off Leclerc in the end. He wasn't that far off his teammate really, but just sort of seemed really lonely once he'd kind of cleared Norris after Norris's slow pit stop.
Yeah, I feel like you've read it. I know you literally haven't said anything particularly positive, but I feel like you've read it slightly more positively than I have, because I spent the race thinking, on a weekend where the sort of undercurrent topic of conversation is, when are you going to put George in that seat? When are you going to get rid of Bottas? Like, Russell was out there all weekend, like bossing qualifyings. And we knew he wasn't going to be announced, but that's been on the tip of everyone's lips. And Bottas just kind of mediocres around. I know he was put on the back foot for sprint qualifying to kind of sort of be this kind of surprise soft tire person, so he couldn't really race. But I mean, like, especially like you had Hamilton with this penalty, you had Max Verstappen out of the race, and like if any time there was for Bottas to be like, Perez was at the back, this should have been the race where Bottas took control, and he was just floating around in kind of third place, not just Bottasing along, and I was just a bit disappointed. Yeah, that's my opinion. I was just kind of like, okay, and I know he was faster than Lewis, sort of in the middle of that second stint and stuff, but it wasn't like it wasn't catching Leclerc speeds, which is what Hamilton was. So yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of disappointed.
Yeah, I don't think he had a bad race, did he? It just wasn't anything special. And I totally get what you're saying. Kind of, he needs to start pulling those out. But at the same time, if you're Toto Wolff, he finished third today. And if you're Christian Horner, Sergio Perez was 18th. So is Bottas, Sean's cliche life of Bottas, is he just doing the job that he's supposed to do? Be there to consistently pick up the points. I'd maybe argue that today he should have been ahead of Leclerc if we're talking about outright pace, but at least it's big points that has helped them in the Constructors' Championship. So it's a tough one with Bottas, and I do still think... I mean, Toto Wolff is saying it isn't. I think the decision's either been taken or as good as to put George in that car, because Bottas after Austria, 2 pretty solid races, didn't look happy. I don't think he looks like a driver that's particularly thrilled where he is right now, and I think he looks like a driver that, if he hasn't been told, he's pretty sure he's on his way out at the end of the season. So I don't know, but I mean, he's helping with the team game. That's what he can do. But like I said, nothing amazingly special, but I don't think it was a horrendous race by any means. Just maybe should have beaten Leclerc. But again, Leclerc was superb today. So it's kind of, I don't want to take anything away from him and say that, oh, he only got second because Bottas was pretty poor. I mean, Bottas, in some ways, maybe lucky to be on the podium, because it was Norris's botched pit stop by the team that kind of, I think it was a pit stop about 6 seconds or something like that. So that allowed Bottas to kind of jump him through the stops. And prior to that, I don't know if he was looking after tyres or whatever, or maybe considering the undercut himself. But he wasn't exactly troubling Norris in the early phase of the race. And if anything, Norris seemed to pick up the pace around the pit stops very, very nicely. So perhaps even you could argue, and maybe you will, that Bottas could even be considered fortunate to be on the podium today.
I mean, yeah, you could easily argue that. I think he would have struggled to drive past Norris had Norris kept position on the track. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't feeling it, and I think he should have been ahead of Leclerc. And I don't know if that's, I think the Mercedes is just generally not as fast compared to the rest of the field as it has been. I think that much is clear, and was as just Hamilton, just because he's Hamilton, able to sort of wring 110% out of that car, whereas Bottas is a more realistic showing of what that car is. And maybe the Ferrari was fairly close to the Mercedes on outright pace, and Leclerc was just able to drag more out of it. But I just don't know. But I think, as we've said before, maybe Bottas is just what Mercedes kind of need, for him to just be there, hanging around, picking up points, letting Hamilton through, whatever life that is for him.
It can't be fun for him, can it? I think as a racing driver, if that's going to be his future, then maybe he might want to go elsewhere and lead a team and try maybe build up a Williams or something like that. I don't know, but I forgot to say actually after the contributions, we're at 218 likes. Don't forget to try and get to 500 likes today for Charles Edward Cheese's $500 donation. It's the rules that I make up. So 500 likes, all for Charles Edward Cheese. That'd be massively appreciated. Do smash that like button. But that's kind of the top three. I've not got, unless you've got anything else you want to add, Stuart. I think that's really all I want to say. We'll probably come back to the Hamilton Verstappen thing later. But anything else you could think of, top three that I've missed? I'll keep an eye on chat while you're saying.
No, I think top three. I mean, there's I think I said more about Bottas than I think I alluded to. There wasn't anything you knew. Like you say, Leclerc, Bottas, fairly just normal expected drives from them. Yeah.
I'll keep an eye on chat, like I say. We sort of touched on Lando Norris there, because I'm sure there'll be something we missed. There's always something. But Lando Norris, like I say, slow pit stop. But I think he's had a very good weekend. I think he'll be disappointed not to be on the podium. But again, 4th and 5th. McLaren's so good this season. I'm so pleased to see them up there fighting. But it was a good weekend for him, in front of the home crowd, of course. I mean, the atmosphere. I know you got to go on Friday. I'm so gutted I wasn't there this weekend. Just hearing the cheers for apparently not just British drivers, but for so many other drivers as well, which is fantastic. So a great atmosphere all around. 356,000 was it in the end?
I think in total across the whole 3 days, something like that. It was mega, and really nice atmosphere. I must say, because some people on the old Twitter, not necessarily a place for the best takes, but like saying, "Oh, the British crowds are awful because they're cheering for Max's crash," but my experience there, they did cheer the British drivers. The biggest cheers, I think, for George whenever he managed to bag a good qualifying lap. But also for Max Verstappen, they were cheering him every time he came out of the pits and every time he put in a good lap. And they were just generally everybody was quite happy to be there and see some fast drivers, to be honest. it was, yeah, a really positive atmosphere.
Yeah, that's good. Somebody just said in chat, thank you very much to, is it Mayank? Leclerc engine issues. We forgot about Leclerc's engine issues. It kept cutting out.
Oh, yes,
for
of
God's
course.
sake. Yeah, I mean, interesting point, actually. I mean, how much time did that cost him? You know, if he gets that car into the last lap, is he hanging on for the win? Could those have cost him the victory today? I mean, it was frustrated, and they seemed to get him sorted after a few laps. But if that's cost him 2 or 3 seconds, then that's the win there, isn't it? So maybe some frustration there for Ferrari, but just cutting out. I mean, they never stayed on board long enough for us to hear anything cutting out, if we would have heard anything, of course, or see anything happening. So I'm not sure what that problem is, but just a bit disappointing for him. But thank you very much for reminding me on that one. What we say about Lando Norris? Fans cheering, weren't we? But overall, just a great weekend for him and McLaren, 4th and 5th place. The slow pit stop, as I've said a couple of times now, is what cost him 3rd to Bottas on the road. But he didn't really look troubled today, did he? Other than that, where was he? 14 seconds up the road from his teammate, 17 seconds behind Bottas. I mean, I said Bottas had a lonely race. Maybe Norris did after that first round of pit stops.
Yeah, I think he just, I think he just drove as fast as he could and had pit stop issues, and this is where he ended up. There wasn't like, I mean, chat's going to correct us now, but there wasn't really much to report that. He did get taken by Hamilton on the road, but I think that was something he realised was inevitable. So he didn't put up much of a fight, unlike Raikkonen every time he came across one of the top runners. But I'm sure we'll get to him.
Kimi just loves racing. We know that, don't we? He'll race anything. He's not bothered. Yeah, I can't think of much on Lando. Just another good weekend. Daniel Ricciardo, he needed that. 5th place today. Really good weekend for Danny Rick. He needed that one as well and fought really well. I mean, 8/10 clear of Carlos Sainz. I'd argue, in fact, I don't even think it's much of an argument. The Ferrari is the quicker car this weekend, and he did well in the end to keep Sainz behind. I know Sainz had his own issues at the pit stop with the sticky left front, the left front not going on. But I mean, to keep him behind, he did a great job, Daniel Ricciardo, and he needed that. That's such a boost for his confidence. But I feel like I've said this before. I think we've had this conversation about he's had a good race, and then this is where his season starts. But then the next race or two, he sort of struggles again. So he really needs this one to be the moment that kickstarts his season.
Yeah, he hasn't, like a lot of the other drivers who at the beginning of the season we were like, oh, they've moved teams, or they are, you know, they're new to Formula One, and they didn't have a lot of testing, so they're struggling to get up to speed. And then a lot of them actually, they got there. Like Perez got there, Vettel, Alonso, seem much stronger than they did at the beginning. Ricciardo's still more jittery, but I was very impressed with him this weekend, and he's traditionally very good at Hungary. I know he was sitting in like a Red Bull and stuff before, but I think he would like to go Britain, good result, Hungary, good result, summer break, that'll set him on the right momentum. I think if he has a dog of a weekend in Hungary, he's going to need to sort of mentally get himself back up there before they come back from the summer break and do the long second stint of the year.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, summer break, what's with that? It's still February, isn't it? I mean, that's what it feels like. What a year. It's just so entertaining.
Not what it feels like in my living room.
Is it not?
It's so...
If this is February, Christ. But no, it's... he needs it. He needed that. Great performance. Much better. I feel like I'm quite condescending because Daniel Ricciardo is a good driver and he's a very quick driver. So I feel like I've been a bit harsh there. But yeah, I think he's very... it's nice to see him there and racing is what I'm trying to say. And again, I think we're going to find this with most of the field. There's not a huge amount to say other than they've driven well or they've raced well. And like I said, did great to keep Carlos Sainz behind. So we'll go to Carlos Sainz. Obviously, that pit stop. I thought there was a point today, and I know they were running 1 and 2, and maybe I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. But I did wonder if Ferrari might nick a double podium today, a 1-3. I don't know why. I think Sainz was driving really, really well as well. I think he's got to grips with that car so well this season. And a longer pit stop really cost him today because I can't remember what his stop was, but it was long enough to put him behind Ricciardo, and he could have been up there fighting with Lando Norris. And, if Norris doesn't have his rough pit stop, maybe that's the fight for the final podium place. I don't know. That's all ifs and buts, but I've just been really impressed with, I think, Leclerc, Norris, Ricciardo and Sainz in particular. Today, as well as Alonso. We'll talk about him in a moment, but I just think, I don't know. Is that good for Sainz, 6th place? I know the pit stop that did him over, wasn't it?
I think similar to Norris, I think what we saw is we weren't getting a lot of the on-track overtaking opportunities. I think sort of Lewis Hamilton sticks out in that regard, but generally the positioning of your car, like in the order, was really important, and losing that and getting in a different part of the train, you just suffered, and Norris suffered from it. He probably should have been on third, and Sainz suffered from it as well. I don't know if he would have got as far as a podium, but I think, just being slotted out in a different position and then not being able to use the pace you might have had, because he was right behind Ricciardo by the end. It wasn't like he was sort of sitting in no man's land like Norris was. It could have been quite a different result. I don't think it would have been like a major swing in the points, but I think he had a fairly good race otherwise. I'm not impressed with his wheeljack guy, who sort of eventually got the wheeljack on, but then just kind of nodded to the others until they let the car go. I was like, tell them it's done, please.
It was very, is it done? Is it done? Yeah, nod. That was a bit ridiculous, but good question actually from Robbie asking in chat there what was going on with the pit stops today, and somebody else said it was Lauren saying heat affected the wheel guns. That was a theory put forward by Sky, that maybe the heat was getting to the wheel guns. It was. I know we do sometimes get the odd hot day in the summer, but it is, and again, I know there are countries out there that are far hotter than we are, and I'm not moaning, but trust me, British heat is different. We ain't built for it. We really are built for it. But do you think the heat getting to it today? Because it was baking. I think track temperature was well over 50 degrees.
I mean, okay, I'm not an expert in this area at all. I would be surprised, considering that even though it's a hot British day, they will experience much hotter days and much hotter climates. And, we used to go to Malaysia, for goodness sake, and Singapore, I think, is hotter than this even at night. Probably not track temperature, because it's not got the sun bearing down on it during the race. I don't know. I would be surprised. But sometimes you just have funny pit stops happening on the same day. Like, it wasn't awful pit stops all the way up and down the field. It was just a couple, and I think that might have been just coincidence.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know how hot would it have to be to. I suppose you got the brakes as well. Brakes, hot brakes, but then they're always hot. So
they are always melting?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think just coincidence.
Yeah, probably just it's just a theory to throw out there, or maybe the heat was getting to the mechanics. Maybe like, I can't handle it, because that's what they all say. You see, definitely. But yeah, I think just the pit stop really messed him up today. But I think he was in the fight for. It'd have been. I think he'd been in and around Norris, which is an image I don't think everybody needed there. But I think he would have been sort of up there with him for that one, and probably ahead of Danny Rick. But even 6th place would have been a solid result for Ricciardo today. Fernando Alonso. He's been so bloody good this weekend, and I don't know why I'm surprised. It's Fernando. He's still got it in him. Fantastic yesterday in the sprint, which we will talk about in a bit, I'm sure, very quickly. But fantastic in the sprint. Now, that start was brilliant. Fought hard with his weaving. He said he's gone to the dark side, so sorry, Jedi fans. He was quite happy to weave on the straight to break the toe, and I just think it was really racy. And then we saw it again today, and obviously the fight with Sebastian Vettel that we joked about at the start, with Vettel obviously lighting up those rear tyres and having a spin, just reminiscent of the Red Bull Ferrari fight back at Luffield, what feels like 3 years ago, but is about a million years ago now. Just, it felt like he's definitely been kind of improving as the season's gone on, but it felt like we had Fernando back this weekend.
Yeah, very much. I think similar to when you were talking about Ricciardo, it's like it sounds condescending to say, but actually this is the driver we're used to, and this is the driver we want to see, and then we know the talent's there. It's good that we're able to see them, exploit all of it and not be sort of hampered by whatever was going on with the team before. This was proper Alonso stuff, and I bet he had a wild time out there. Lots of fun fighting, sticking it in, getting as many points as possible. And I hope this is the Alonso we see for the rest of the year, to be honest, and the rest of his contracts. I've been down a bit on Formula One before for like the old hands hanging around for too long and taking up space. But if they're going to be driving like this and having fun like this and giving us entertainment, then I'm all for it. Honestly, let's have more of this, Alonso.
That new Asian guy in chat says a lot more likable now than his last days at McLaren. Jenson Button, I think it was James, sure it was, made a brilliant point on Sky about that, kind of, because he knows Fernando very well, obviously, because they worked together at McLaren and raced against each other for quite a few years. In fact, yeah, could race together pretty much from the start, didn't they? Button debuted 2000, Alonso 2001, so a lot of experience together. He said something along the lines of Fernando, when you're in the F1 bubble, and it's the same for all drivers, you don't necessarily not respect or appreciate that you're part of something special, and then you kind of get cut off from the outside world, and then when you go away and come back, you've then got a bit more perspective. And I wonder if that's what it is with Fernando. He's come back and realised he just loves racing, and that he's got a bit more perspective, so he doesn't need to get all... I'm sure he'll have his moments, but he doesn't need to get all... If you believe the reports, I hate the word toxic, because I don't know if he's toxic. That's really harsh, but that's kind of what the media like to push, isn't it, with Fernando Alonso, that he's a bit toxic in his team. And maybe he's realised that no point worrying about that. Come in, do what he can, use his experience. And he's just a bit more chill. And he's just there because he enjoyed his racing. So I definitely think he missed F1. And I'm sure he said it in interviews. But I think that was spot on from Jenson Button. I really like that analysis. So I'm just really pleased to see Fernando racing well. Like, apart from the Vettel one, I couldn't tell you a specific move outside of sprint because we were very much focused on the front, weren't we, for a lot of that race for understandable reasons and what was going on there. But I just think feels like we've got Fernando back, so all's right with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't hear that chat from Jensen. I was on Channel 4 most of the weekend, but yeah, that reads about right, because I think he got to that state of being a little bit kind of maybe entitled and kind of upset that he wasn't in car, or he wasn't in the right position on the track that was like worthy of his status, perhaps. And yeah, I think you're right. I think he went away and he was like, actually, I just like racing and I just like getting the most out of my car, so I'm going to do that. And hopefully, even though he's probably not going to be fighting for wins for maybe the rest of his career, I think there's a fire in his eyes, isn't there?
You say that, but the way this season's going, I feel like we are going to get a Gasly Monza situation. I feel like we are going to get a shock winner and a shock podium. You know, what did we have in Monza last year? It was Gasly, Sainz, and Stroll, wasn't it? And we saw similar at other races as well. We saw it this year in Baku. I feel like we're going to get a big shock result. And if I kind of look at the field and I think, if you have a crazy race, there's a bit of chaos, who's going to capitalise on that? And every single time I look across when I say it, all I see is Alonso. And I think if there's going to be a shock win, it's going to be him, or he's going to get a podium. I think a lot of people said at the start of the season as a bold prediction, he would get a podium. So I said it in a video on Friday night that nobody watched. That was not supposed to sound really salty and bitter. I'm so sorry that nobody watched. They could go in the bin now. But yeah, message received and understood. I kind of said if anybody can, Fernando can, and that should be his catchphrase. So we'll see. You never know. We'll start going through team by team now, though. Otherwise, we're going to be here all night going through all 20.
Yep.
So we'll stick with Alpine and go with Ocon. I think points is what he needed this weekend. I'm not going to sit here and say he had an amazing weekend, but he was another one who got to take advantage of sprint, didn't he, with the softer tyre at the start and make up places, which was good for him. He's had a rough few races. A couple of points is just what he needed this weekend. Just settle things down a little bit.
Yeah, I think he had a really good weekend. I think qualifying could have gone better for him, but you're right. The sprint sort of really turned that around. And that's maybe one of the good things about the sprint is you can just then, it's like a final shuffle up of the order using a few tactics. I really wasn't expecting people to mix up using tyres. I probably got a whole section to talk about sprint later, but yeah. Yeah, it was good basically to see him make the most of his weekend. He is, as we've spoken about Alonso, kind of now on the flip reverse side and being shown up a bit by Alonso. So I think he really needs to just prove himself sort of on a continual basis.
Flip reverse. I'm not going to sing. Who remembers them? Esteban. Somebody said in chat it was a bit anonymous. Mike just saying Ocon totally anonymous, unfortunately, in the race, but he got the point, so that's great for him. I don't think he did anything amazing. And again, we have one every week where I'll get a comment or someone in chat will go, I think you'll find that he paraglided around the outside of such and such at one point. And I completely missed it. But he just, like I say, a rough few races, he needed to just get a couple of points on the board, have a clean race, and that's exactly what he did. And I think that'll just give him a little bit of confidence going forward, because it is quite weird that and I'm sure it's just coincidence, he signed his contract and then he sort of fell away a little bit. So hopefully that'll give him a bit of a boost as well. Oh, go on, Stuart. Were you going to say something?
No. I was just going to say he's been signed up for about 18 years now, hasn't he? That was literally it. It wasn't even worth saying. But it's a long one, isn't it? He's got a long contract.
Couple of years, isn't it? Another couple of years. Was it 3?
Yeah, I think it was 3. I think it was surprisingly quite long. Anyway, yes. I'll let you carry on. Luckily, the AlphaTauris are together.
Yeah, make it a bit easier. No, Lance Stroll, Aston Martin. Obviously, we kind of touched on Vettel. We'll do that in a second, just to finish off there. Lance Stroll. I think it was Crofty in commentary. Kind of summed it up. He just sort of, nobody really mentioned him, and he sort of was in the top 10 and getting on with it, quite happy. P8, nice little fight with Alonso at one point that came very close to a little bit of contact. I think Alonso very nearly into the back of him, but I think Lance Stroll, it's 4 points. It's about, I think 8th place is probably a really good weekend for Aston without a bit of complete and total chaos like we saw at Baku ahead of them. I think that's about where they are, sort of tail end of the points. So that's probably a really decent result. Be interested to see where they'd have been if Vettel had not had his spin. And I love Seb Vettel. You might have noticed I've got mad respect for that guy, and I think he gets way too much stick. But every time he spins, and I blame chat for this. I blame you guys, because I would. As I look across at you, giving you evils. I don't mean it. But I sort of, every time he spins, I just sort of go, of course he has. It's like, it doesn't even spin that often anymore, but I just feel like it's become that much of a meme. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see where he would have been, because I think that would have been it was a good fight between Alonso and Stroll, but I think if you throw Vettel in there with Ocon as well, I think you've got a really nice, tasty scrap, because the Alpine Aston one's got the potential to give us the battle that McLaren and Ferrari are giving us.
Yeah, I mean, they're a funny one, Aston Martin. They were doing terribly in the first practice session, I must say. They were quite disappointing, and I was there. The only reason I was there on Friday is because my friend works for Peroni, and he got sort of some tickets because of the relationship with Aston Martin, and we got a couple of general admission tickets. So he was sort of like pseudo rooting for them, and it was like, come on, Aston Martin. And Stroll himself, I mean, he had a bad qualifying. You know, he qualified 15th. He only got up to 14th through sprint qualifying. I think only because Perez had his spin. And to get up to 8th, I think it's actually really good. I'm actually generally pretty impressed. He sort of did the opposite of what Vettel did, which was get a lot out of qualifying and then throw it away in the race. So I'm really hard pressed to place where Aston Martin kind of fit in the grand scheme of things. They haven't got themselves over their sort of 2021 rule change setback in the way that Mercedes have, more so. And I just can't figure out where they sort of belong. I don't know how you feel like this. Where you feel they are, who they're battling with, and what you expect them to be at the end of the season.
Aston.
Was I not saying that? Was I saying Racing Point or something?
No, I thought you said Aston, but I wanted to double check that you hadn't been like, you'd thrown in a curveball and gone like Haas, and I'd have been like, nobody. No, Aston, I think tail end of the points, I think tail end of the top 10, they're in that fight with Alpine, and I think AlphaTauri, they seem to have a bit of a knack this season of not really delivering on a Sunday. I don't know. So I kind of feel like if AlphaTauri hooked up a perfect weekend and went on a consistent run, I feel like AlphaTauri are probably around 5th fastest, probably. So I'd maybe even go as far as to say Alpine. Again, Alpine are so inconsistent as well. I think that is the fight, yeah. Alpine, Aston, but maybe 7th, 6th, 7th in there. That's the battle for them. But I think if they can get 5th place, obviously compared to where they were last year, they're not be happy with that. But I think given the struggles at the start of the year and how good that AlphaTauri has looked at quite a few tracks and the issues they've had there not delivering the results maybe that car's got the potential to deliver, they'd probably take 5th right now. So I think fifth is they'll be very happy with, but I think they're in that fight for sixth and seventh. But again, I think you've got Mercedes, Red Bull, or Red Bull, Mercedes. Then you've got Ferrari, McLaren. Then you've sort of got this really weird group of Alpine, Aston, and Alfa Tauri, who none of them are consistent, if that makes sense. It's really hard to kind of gauge where they are. None are consistent. So one weekend Alpine look the better team, and then it's Aston and then Alfa Tauri, and they kind of flip all over the place. I'm not quite sure how to read that one. And then you've got, obviously, Alfa Romeo and Williams, and then Haas are in last year, basically. Well, they are literally, aren't they? Because they've not developed the car apart from the regulation changes. So around there, just in that little fight. But I think they'd be happy with fifth, surely, in the championship if they could get that.
I think they'd be delighted if they managed to get fifth. I'm not entirely confident they'll do it, but I think, they're definitely not aiming for any higher than that. So I think that should be their goal, depending on how quickly they want to give up on this year and focus on the big changes next year.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about AlphaTauri super quickly in just a second. I've just got to say, to chat, for the most part, you've disagreed a lot with us, and you've disagreed with each other, but for the most part, it's been respectful. Please don't hop in the chat and start giving the mods a load of grief. They moderate for free for nothing more, bless them, than a thank you every now and again, so that we can do these live streams, so that we can concentrate on the conversation without having to worry about things kicking off in chat. So don't come in abusing the mods, because I will just go smashing down the banhammer. I don't like doing that, but just be respectful. It's not difficult. It's not. Although, as I said on Twitter earlier, if we'd had Twitter and social media when Michael Schumacher was racing, I'd have been absolutely awful to deal with. I'm pretty confident I would have been, because he could do no wrong, and I still get mad with people when they're like, he was a cheater. No, he wasn't. Yeah, he was a bit. Alpha Tauri, Yuki Tsunoda 10th, Pierre Gasly 11th, 1 point. Again, back to what I was saying, bit of inconsistency there. But to be fair to Gasly today, he was running higher, wasn't he? And then he got a puncture really towards the end of the race. So it was actually quite a solid recovery to battle hard late on and get himself through to 11th place. So I mean, Pierre Gasly, I've got nothing really to say on him as a person, because I keep singing his praises. I think he's had lunch this week or after Austria with Helmut Marko, or in Austria with Helmut Marko, which sounds delightful. I can't think of anything more exciting. And it sounds like he's got a lot more reassurances about his future, and maybe there's been a bit of burying of the hatchet there, perhaps, and Marko realising Gasly's a better driver than maybe he gave him credit for. I know he wasn't great at Red Bull, to be fair to Marko, but it seems like he's a bit more happy now. So it's disappointing he didn't score points, but I think he would have been in the points today without that late puncture. And Tsunoda, I think is it just me, Stuart, or has he calmed down a little bit? Again, I sound really condescending. I'm not a racing driver, but he seems to have really mellowed a little bit in the last few races, and the results are starting to come for him now.
Yeah, we're definitely not. I think the clear way of knowing that is that we haven't really been seeing him much. Whereas, obviously, we get the cut to in the replays and the radios whenever he was sort of involved in something and getting in some scrapes, running off track, and getting angry about it. I think it's good to be seeing him a little bit settled, and probably a little bit more anonymous, actually, because I think he just needed to get his head down. We know he's quick. He was just having a bit of a time of it. 10th is a good result for him. I think like we said with the Aston Martins, I think the latter end of the points is where he should be sort of aiming for and what sort of expecting on a semi-regular basis. So yeah, I think he should be fairly happy, but otherwise we didn't really see him, did we?
No, I was going to say good, clean race, but I don't know. He could have hit anything. I didn't really see anything of him. I'm in trouble now. The mods are trying to unionise. But anyway, I can't say anymore. I think Gasly is the big talking point there at AlphaTauri to sort of come back after that late puncture. I don't know what caused the puncture. Maybe we'll get a bit more. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll have a super quick look. I say I'm going to have a super quick look. I'm going to taste, if you're eating, I'm so sorry. It's so hot, and I'm sweating so much, I can't unlock my phone with my fingerprint.
Wow.
I haven't got a fan on, because I've got the Shure SM7B mic, as I've said before, and it picks up everything. So I can't even break wind on stream anymore, because it's terrible. We were in the points right until the end, then unfortunately I had a puncture and had to box with 5 laps to go. It's very frustrating to be coming away with no points after today's race. That's from Pierre Gasly.
He was frustrated basically after every session, because he was just outside the top 10 all the time.
They want to continue the fight for better positions, blah, blah, blah. What's Jody Eggington, the technical director, said? Pierre looked quite strong against Alpine. Unfortunately, Pierre then picked up a puncture from debris on the track and was forced to pit for softs near the end. So I guess what I'm saying is not a tyre failure. So that's a good thing. Pirelli going, phew. So it was debris that took Gasly out with that one with the puncture. So shame, but like you say, a little bit frustrating for them overall over the course of the weekend. We'll do Williams, Alfa, Haas and Perez in just a moment. Once again, 371 likes. A few more, please. That'll be absolutely great because we need to get that 500 for Charles Edward Cheese. And not for me. So if you hate me, ignore it. Give it for Charles. Charles Edward Cheese. And everybody who's donated anything today, actually, really. We'll do some super chats super quickly while I remember on that subject. So Annette said Ericsson hit them. There you go. Is it Rifle? Yeah, I'll just say Rifle. You know who you are. Thank you very much. There's tears for Russell. No points and Bottas pleasing Mercedes. Jack Chambers, the real question is cream first or jam on scones? Don't come in here with that, Jack. It's just, look. Hamilton versus Verstappen we can handle. We're not getting into that debate. We're really, really not. It'll be the crunchy peanut butter thing all over again. Pythagoras185, thank you very much. Says, love the streams. Thank you very much for your contribution and glad you enjoy them. I'm going to try and do more of these. We did a Sunday stream that wasn't a race weekend stream the other day and I absolutely loved it. So we need to do more of them, especially midweek ones. Enki, £2 for 50 characters. $50 for 200, or £50 for 250 characters. Thank you very much, mate. And Robbie says, Perez has been extremely poor since Baku. In my opinion, he hasn't proven that he can perform better than Albon would have had they given him the time. So we'll come to Perez in a bit, mate. But thank you very much for all of your super chats. And let's try and get those likes up for Charles Edward Cheese. 100 to go. George Russell, 12th place. You said about Gasly, Gasly just missing out on the points all weekend. Sort of the same for Russell today, wasn't it? It has been the last few weekends. 12th place, so not 11th. So that's something. At least he wasn't right on the fringes of them. But penalty yesterday in sprints. I mean, qualified brilliantly. Yeah. So, he can do it on a Saturday. He can do it on a Friday in terms of qualifying. I think he raced well in the sprint. Would I say raced well, or did you sprint well in the sprint?
I say he raced well. Yeah. He did. Like, considering we just expect that car to go backwards in any race scenario, he held on to a top 10 position within the sprint race over 17 laps, which is great. He didn't do it today, but he did it yesterday.
Yeah, he didn't do it when it mattered. God, George, come on. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that Williams is better than Latifi's making it look. I think people are right. I think that car is better than Latifi makes it look. No, not digging on Latifi. Probably one of the nicest guys on the grid. But I also think that takes away from what Russell's doing. I don't think that car is on a level with an AlphaTauri, an Aston Martin, or an Alpine. I think it's probably Alfa Romeo and Williams are very similar in that regard in terms of pace. So I don't actually think it's fair to just go, he qualified 8th, yeah, but the car's better than last year. Well, yeah, but it's not on the level of some of those in the midfield. So I think he's doing a great job with it. But good race today. Do you think he'll get points in that, Williams? It just feels like he's just destined never to.
I mean, he came 12th today. Like, he's close. He came 12th, but both Red Bulls, were behind him for one reason or another. It's going to need to on those special races where some weird thing happens that I think allows him, to hold on around that position and just be sort of maybe gifted a couple of places to be thereabouts. The same way, I guess, Pierre Gasly earned a win. He definitely earned a win in the way that I think George Russell will earn some points. I think. I don't see it necessarily happening with like a high finishing rate, although he's got very close a number of times. So, if he gets a good start from a good qualifying position and has a decent strategy and just could keep up a little bit of pace, he's getting closer. He's getting closer. It's not off. Yes, I think he will get a point. Yeah, in answer to your question, I think he will get a point.
Yeah,
see the cogs turning, couldn't you?
No, I completely get what you're saying. He's kind of going to fall into a category now, and I think we're going to be doing this with probably most of the remaining drivers now, apart from probably Raikkonen and Perez, where we didn't see an awful lot of them. So I don't want to just make something up and be like, George, wow, what a skier, or something like that. So we're going to roll on from George and talk about Nicholas Latifi. 14th place. Beat both the Haas boys. Not really that difficult, is it, to be fair? Bless them. In amongst the Alphas as well. I know Kimi had his spin late on, but I think, yeah. Sorry, Latifi fans. Like, what can I say if we don't see them? It's so difficult. You get all the replays and that through Reddit and on social media, don't you? About tomorrow morning or later tonight, and it's kind of like for race reaction, it's just too late. So I just have to go. He beat Raikkonen, Perez, Mazepin, and Schumacher. So hey, that's something.
Yeah, I mean, Latifi kind of finished where you expect Latifi to finish, didn't he? I think with both the Haases, Latifi and one of the Alphas, you kind of like, okay, well, they finished there. That's where expected. And then Raikkonen and Giovinazzi will occasionally sort of do something weird and appear in the points. But otherwise, yeah, the back end of the field, you don't really see. We saw a lot of Raikkonen, I guess. But yeah, Latifi'd.
That'll do.
That's, what can you say? It's a tricky thing for, like, if you're Latifi and you're trying to sort of sell yourself, you want to put a mark on you want to be noticed by, I don't know, bigger teams, whatever, that you're a solid racing driver and you're here to stay. It's hard, I think, when you just, you've got that Williams, you've got a certain amount of race pace, and you just hang around in 14th or whatever. I think that's the tricky thing. I think he's got talent. I don't know how much, because it's really hard to say much about him.
Yeah. I'm ignoring that in chat. I'm not going to get involved in it. If you're blocked for a reason, not because you said something about Hamilton. It was probably because you're being a dick, quite frankly. That's generally why we block people. It's the only reason we block people. But anyway, yeah, I can't say much on Latifi. And like I said, nice guy, doing all right. But what can you say? Giovinazzi 13th today. Raikkonen 15th. Alfa Romeo, probably actually, I think I've said this before, where they are. If you get a few retirements ahead, they're going to be knocking on the doors of points. But then Kimi was much higher than 15th, wasn't he? And then there was the incident with Perez. So, yeah. I mean, it was such a weird incident because Perez is sort of on the outside of, I think it's Luffield, isn't it? Was it Luffield? No, was it? Somewhere down there, wasn't it? But he's sort of gone around the outside and there's a bit of a pinch point, and Raikkonen has kind of kept his car in there, and there's a little bit of a, I've not seen on-board, but it looks like there's a bit of contact, and Kimi's had a bit of an off. So I think he got summoned to the stewards for that. I don't think that's a penalty.
He did, yes. I haven't seen if they're given a penalty yet, but he was summoned for that decision. I'll quickly have a look at that. He did get involved twice with Perez, didn't he? Once on the first stint and once on the second stint, if I'm right. Like, completely unnecessarily. No further action.
No further action. I think that's about right, isn't it? I don't think there's... I mean, if anything, he's ruined his own race, hasn't he, in that situation? And I don't think Perez has done... It is a pinch, but that's the kind of... I don't know, you know... It wouldn't have been surprised if somebody got a penalty for that because it's the bloody stewards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think
the stewards have said discussions with the drivers and the teams all felt no one was predominantly at fault, so they agreed to take no further action.
Let's appreciate that Giovinazzi has been destroying Raikkonen in quali for quite a few races now, says Mayank. Again, thank you very much, mate. A lot of contributions in this one to the chat. I think Gio's surprising a few people this year. I think we've had the conversation before, so I don't want to get into it, and maybe you can have that debate in chat respectfully, or we can do it another day. Is it that Gio's really improving, or is it that Kimi's starting to fall away a little bit? There's an argument there to be had, but I think either way, you know, he's been doing great in qualifying. He's been getting some decent results in a car that isn't brilliant. I mean, they're in that bubble, aren't they, of teams that have like just completely written off this year. Alfa are. They're totally focused on next year, and it's funny because that 2 points they got so far this season, one for each of the drivers, could well be enough for 8th in the standings, which is probably what they were targeting at the very start of the year as a minimum. So they've kind of got that in the bag almost, unless Haas do something incredible. So I think Gio's doing a great job.
Or Williams, to be honest.
Yeah, or Williams, absolutely.
I mean, that must be what they're aiming for. If they can get just a very small handful of points, that could be as much as 8th, which is exciting. Is it right? There's no actual answer to this, but I feel like Kimi's photograph that appears when they're doing the grid is getting older every race, like some kind of what's that novel about the portrait in the attic? Completely forget where the portrait gets older and the man gets younger. Anyway, like that, I would have been a really good metaphor if I could remember the name of it.
No, I looked through it and you sort of, can you remember, and this is totally off, it's not off topic, but we will get to Perez in a second, I promise. But can you remember when Schumacher came back and we see pictures now of the press conferences he was in, and it was kind of like you had Seb Vettel there and you had all these younger drivers there, and then Michael Schumacher, who looked taller and bigger and 100 years older than them. It doesn't look old. Michael Schumacher has never looked old.
No.
But, you know, he just looks so out of place, like it was... like it was a school trip, and he was the parent that had gone along and agreed to look after like 5 other kids for the day or something.
It's shocking how young the old people looked. You just don't see it. Portrait of Dorian Gray. Thank you, Jack and Emily. Portrait of Dorian Gray is the novel.
There you go. So yeah, you get it all here. Why not?
Classy, this joint.
It is very, very. I'll start on Harry Potter soon. I'm not quite up on that kind of thing. You know. Yeah. Sergio Perez. Shocker of a weekend, quite frankly. I'm not even going to try and... What can you say? I mean, sprint incident yesterday. I know he'd been complaining in practice about an unstable car through some of the faster corners. I've seen excuses from wind to this, to that, to the other. It was a mistake for me. He's lost the car. He's made the error, and he's the first... I guess I can't really think of a better word for it, but I guess he's the first victim of this new sprint qualifying format where it is, you know, you make one mistake and it can put you from in contention for a decent grid slot to start in the back, or in this case, a pit lane. I mean, he was racing well to come back through the field, but I don't think he was coming through as quickly as he should have been in that car, given how much better that Red Bull is. And they've made the changes in the pit lane as well to make sure that he had a car that he could race with. That's why they gave the pit lane start and broke Parc Fermé. I just think a really sloppy weekend. And, you know, ahead of sprint, he qualified on Friday and was it about P5? Because he got his last lap time deleted, didn't he? So he's P5 on the grid. So he's kind of in and around where he needed to be. 4th, really. But, you know, 5th is better than last. And then it just sort of fell apart after that. So I can't really pick many positives. I mean,
no,
like Baku, when Max Verstappen retires, he's got to be there. That's his job. It's like if Hamilton retires, Bottas has got to be there. If Verstappen retires, Perez has got to be there. When Schumacher retired, Barrichello, Germany 2000, anyone, had to be there. Started 18th on the grid. Schumacher retired. He went on to win that race. They've got to be there as second drivers.
He's been having a better run of things as lately. This just it all kind of fell apart, didn't it? And that accident in sprint qualifying really set him back. And like I was expecting it. They slapped on the hard tire at the front, and I was expecting to see like a Perez special where he used his tire preservation techniques. He took that hard tire like really far, and then I don't know, got onto the softs for like a sprint at the end. At the beginning of the race, I was thinking, he could still be on for a podium because he got up to 12th or something by, before 10 laps, I think. But it never really happened for him, and they switched him onto the mediums like actually really early. Maybe the hards just weren't working for him, and he was just floating around. I think he'd got up to 10th by the time they decided to pit him again to steal the fastest lap point away from Hamilton, which was an interesting one. Obviously, he lost the point in doing that, but essentially gave a point to Max Verstappen in the difference between him and Hamilton. So like that was an interesting sort of balance that Red Bull had to calculate. He was, yeah. He had to give up a point to do that. But I guess maybe he didn't care. Yeah. So not what we would expect from Perez. Honestly, maybe they were worried about tire failures in Silverstone to not allow him to really push a strategy. But yeah, you're right. I think he's got to come back storming in Hungary, where I think we're expecting Red Bull to shine again.
Yeah, I just don't think, just not good enough across the weekend. And it's not, if that was Albon or Gasly, I'd be saying the same. If it was Bottas, I'd be saying the same. There's no hiding away from it. If you're a Sergio Perez fan, I'm pretty sure most of you would agree that it was a very disappointing weekend. So, yeah, I mean, we all know it anyway. We're not stupid. Red Bull are quite open about it too. That today confirms Sergio Perez is Max Verstappen's out-and-out number 2. I know we kind of knew that anyway, and like I said, the team have been pretty clear about it, and that he is there to back up Max. But to take a point away from Checo, and a point out of the Constructors' Championship to get a point away from Hamilton so that Verstappen keeps a bit more of a lead. Look, Red Bull, of course, want the Constructors for money, but they're going for the drivers this year. That looks to me like their priority. As silly as it sounds, I know the Drivers' Championship doesn't pay any money really, other than maybe sponsors for drivers, but if anything, it costs you money because your driver might want some more in bonuses, but it doesn't win you any money. It's the Constructors that pays out, but they clearly want the drivers. Otherwise, they'd have let Perez get that point, so they were a little bit further clear of Mercedes, even if it just was a point. So that's kind of confirmed that to me this weekend, that Verstappen and the title is their priority, and that's fine. I mean, Ferrari, they wanted to win Constructors. When they won the Constructors in 1999, they were obviously delighted with that, but the drivers was the big one for Ferrari, and that's kind of how I see Red Bull with this one.
There's definitely a lot more like cachet and prestige, and it's more celebrated, the drivers. And I think most people will... If Max wins the Drivers' Championship, but Mercedes win the Constructors' Championship, I think in people's heads, people will think, Red Bull won that year, whether or not they sort of won it as a constructor, but they won the Drivers' title. That's how it just kind of feels. And you think of 1999 as a Mika Hakkinen year. You don't think of it as a Ferrari year, really, do you?
No.
And you're right. There's definitely like millions of pounds in the difference between it, but I think there's a sort of unmeasurable value to winning the drivers. Although Williams would say otherwise.
Yeah. it's
Williams have always favoured the constructors over the drivers.
And Mercedes have in a way, haven't they? Because like they kind of always say they make decisions on, the team want to win the race because of the constructors, and then once that's sorted, the drivers are free to race. But and people say no, they don't. They favour Hamilton, but I just think Hamilton's just a much better driver than Bottas, and that's why. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think Red Bull, when it comes to branding and marketing, they're gonna really go in, aren't they, on selling a world champion over selling the team. So I think it's just what it confers to me. But yeah, just not good enough overall from Perez this weekend. I will say, I don't know if it was skill, luck, or judgment. I suspect luck. How the hell he kept it out the wall at Chapel, I do not know. So I guess credit to him for that is about all I can say. Is not sticking it in the wall there, because that would have been expensive. And I think Red Bull have got enough to spend money on this weekend after this weekend now. So yeah, I'm not going to say any more on that. Haas. They finished again. I'm going to pre-record this. I just hit the button on my thing, and then I can just play it every week. They finished, which is what they have to do, because if anything happens ahead, they can capitalise on that. But must say, Nikita Mazepin finished ahead of Mick Schumacher today, and I think, I'll just double check, but I don't believe there was a late pit stop or anything for Schumacher in there. So Schumacher pitted, it says twice, but once, of course. Once was for the red flag, so one pit stop each. So, yeah, probably actually, you could argue Mazepin's best drive. Beating his teammate 1.5 seconds up the road today.
I mean,
got to pick your battles.
Yeah, probably. Good work, I guess. I mean, I would rather have 20 drivers that, are competent than have 19 drivers that are competent and the one I don't really like be an absolute liability. If Nikita Mazepin is getting his act together, that's good for the sport, I would say. That's all I could say. But good for him for getting a result on merit, I guess.
I mean, obviously his entire weekend and race weekend was ruined by that spin in sprint. I mean, where could he have ended up?
We can only speculate.
He could have been 2 seconds up the road. That's not Mazepin hate, by the way. It's just where Haas are. They're terrible. They're where Williams were in 2019. They've just got to be finishing the races. And then if you get a crazy race like a Monaco 96, as unlikely as that might feel these days, but if you get a crazy race like that, and they're finishing every race, they're on for a big haul of points. So it could be something like that. Imagine that though, if you're Williams. Imagine Haas, like a car that they, before even started this season, they said they're not even going to bother with. They're so slow, they're so far off the pace, and Williams finished 10th this year, and Haas got one lucky race when they got to the end and they took a load of points. That'd be devastating, wouldn't it? But yeah, we've talked about Vettel and Verstappen as well. So, Driver of the day. Official driver of the day went to Charles Leclerc. Let me know one surname in chat. I'll read a few out as well. I'm going to tell you right where I am straight away, Stuart. I'll go first for a change, so you're not totally on the spot. I also fear I'm about to take yours away from you, but it's 100% for me, Charles Leclerc. I can't look anywhere else. I think there's some good drives. I think some good performances, but Charles Leclerc today was superb.
God, I hadn't really thought about this. I forgot that this was coming, even though it comes every single time. It's hard not to give it to Charles Leclerc. I'm just trying to think of someone stand out different and who really impressed me this race. I think as an alternative option, I think Fernando Alonso had a really good race, especially if you include the sprint teaser we had yesterday. His racing this weekend, very as we covered earlier, very impressed with Fernando Alonso. So that's my other option I'm throwing in. But I probably would have gone Leclerc if I just didn't want to be different.
No, I think both. I mean, Alonso driver of the weekend, I think possibly for me. I think it was brilliant. It's just been so nice to see him there. But Carola says Leclerc. Norris for Punky Pink, aka Emily. I keep saying I'm just going to be Emily, and then I read your whole name every single time. Halfway through, I'm like, well, that's Emily, Sean. Stop it. Thank you very much for that. Hey Ray says Lewis. Driving a Minardi is not easy. Oh, I mean Haas. Thank you very much.
Really?
Adam says Stroll. I think Stroll's a good shout. Maybe not the best out there today, but really good, stellar drive. Guarding the Blind says Leclerc. Del says Verstappen. Alex says Leclerc. Keep scrolling. I've got some, I'm kind of avoiding everyone's conversation here. I don't want to go read. I've done it so many times. Mayank says Leclerc. Sammy says Leclerc. MD Games. A cringe lord. Genetic failure. Mahir says Leclerc, or all say Leclerc. Max says gotta be Leclerc. Dan says Leclerc. Chazza says Hamilton. Hamilton for Rondell. Good evening, mate. Daniel Philpott says Russell. Yuri Vips for Villager. Vettel for Dev Null. Ali says Leclerc. Jamie Leclerc. Rifle says Hamilton. Ben Zul Uzair. Tighter, they all say Leclerc. Davidus says Verstappen. Are they pity votes for Verstappen? Like people like, well, Verstappen.
He had a great first half of the lap.
He did, well, to be fair, he had a really good sprint as well, didn't he?
That is true.
Pretty dominant there in the end, really. So, Devon Butler says, David, there was always going to be one. Have you bought the game, Stuart?
I haven't, because I should be being sent one by Codemasters because my voice is in it, but they normally take quite a few months to get around to do that, so I don't actually have it yet.
Oh, you've changed. Robbie says Norris. Kova says Sainz. Annette says definitely Max. Another Devon Butler there. Why not?
Yeah.
Did Max really get 12% of the votes? That's from Jamie Santos. Yeah, okay, fair enough. All right.
I'll double check that out.
Red Bull Sam Petronas says Fiat Mazepin for Jake Van Dorn. Thank you very much. Mostly Leclerc, it looks like. Quite a few for Hamilton as well. Pedro says Hamilton. Let's pick a few out. Rick says Hamilton. Yeah, decent mix. It seems to be Hamilton and Leclerc and Norris, and a couple for Alonso, which is good. So, yeah, thank you very much, guys, for a few of those there. Christopher says Daniel Ricciardo.
Right, he did all right, I guess. I mean, yeah, actually, he did pretty well, but can't really fault Daniel Ricciardo. Hamilton's second in the actual official tally, but a long way behind Leclerc. Only a tiny bit ahead of Verstappen, hilariously.
If only it'd been a tiny bit ahead going to cops. Anyway, I've always said it. I won't give driver of the day to anybody who's put somebody else in the wall, whether it's their fault or not. I was the same with Leclerc earlier last year at Sakir, and I think Leclerc had a moment like that as well this season. At Austria, Leclerc had a fantastic race to come back from that, but he caused the incident with Gasly, so I wouldn't give him driver of the day. That's just how I do it. I think if you cause an incident like that and you ruin somebody else's race or take them out, whether it's 100% your fault or not, or it's a racing incident, I think you have to be excluded from driver of the day. That's maybe a bit harsh, but yes. We are on 467 likes, few more if we can for Charles Edward Cheese. I can't obviously, is that 33. Need 33 more to get it to the 500 would be massively appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe as well if you are new. Might be doing a live stream on Wednesday. Nothing guaranteed. Just waiting for some confirmation from somebody on that one. And I'm sure there'll be some more videos this week as well. And then it's Hungary. And then it's a summer break, which I just don't get how it's a summer break already. But
yeah,
crazy
time
season.
works in mysterious ways.
But it's sort of like it's going to be sort of about 11 races come the summer break. But we've still got like 12 more in about 3 weeks, or what feels like about 3 weeks, all being well after the summer break. So if you are an F1 content creator, take a deep breath in the middle of August, because you're going to bloody need it, because it is going to be flat out until Christmas pretty much. So yeah, good fun. But yeah, if you've got any questions, please pop them in chat. We'll answer a couple as well. But I will, first of all, briefly, I want to do a video on this at some point, but briefly talk about Sprint. Not the brand, the race. Sorry, the qualifying session. I'm going to be honest. I actually quite liked having a session that mattered on the Friday evening. I thought that gave, if I were a fan paying for a ticket for a full weekend, I think that makes me feel, even though there's a bit less track action, I feel like I've got a bit more value for money. But even watching at home, I really enjoyed having a session that mattered, because practice, and like I always watch practice, and when I get to sort of 2/3 of the way into the season, I stop because it's boring. And I know practice is not supposed to be entertaining. That's not the point of practice. It's for the teams, not the fans. But I liked having that important session on a Friday evening. And I did enjoy the sprint a lot more than I thought I would. I thought I'd hate it. I thought I'd absolutely hate it, but I liked it. I felt it was funnily enough, I thought it'd be too short, but it felt a little bit too long. I think you could have knocked maybe 3 laps off the end or something like that, I think, because it all got a little bit processional. But at the same time, if you're having something like that, if you have a 15-lap race, then the drivers will back off a couple of laps before that. And if you have a 10-lap race, they're going to back off a couple of laps before that. So I think however long it is, there's going to be sort of towards the end, it will get a little bit dull. But I didn't think it was as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's... How can I word it? I think as a format, it's a good baseline, a good starting point, but I do feel something needs to be tweaked, and pole position should not go to the winner of the sprint. Pole position should go to the guy who gets pole on Friday, and then give this Pirelli Speed King nonsense to whoever wins the sprint on Saturday.
Okay.
I know what the rule is around pole positions, please.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Okay, I'm going to start with the Friday. I'm going to go back to the beginning of what you said and start with the Friday, because I agree. Fridays are not. There's not a lot going on a Friday, especially with the Formula One. But actually being there, and I haven't been to an F1 weekend since 2008. But actually being there on the Friday, it was so good, and there was so much going on all the time. Like you had your sort of practices in the beginning. We had Formula 2 and W Series there supporting, as well as some kind of Masters GT Series, which was also quite fun. But you had, your practice for your Formula 2 and your W Series, and then a late practice in the afternoon, sort of where the FP2 slot normally is for Formula 1. So you kind of, you can walk around the track, pick some spots, watch the cars, do your thing. And then the afternoon, it was just W Series qualifying, Formula 2 qualifying, F1 qualifying, one after the other. And it was a really great day, like, full of action. And you also got to sort of compare all the cars from your vantage point and stuff. It was like nice. And then the evening, it sort of descended into festival atmosphere. So that was good. Like in terms of Fridays, which we've been talking about as a bit of a dull day, great. I wasn't there on Saturday. And the sprint race itself, I think, was much, like you say, much better than we thought. I think there was a lot of speculation that they wouldn't bother going for it because of how risky it was for the full race. You get into a bit of an incident and then you lose essentially rows and rows of your grid position, depending on how bad your incident is. As we saw for Perez, it kind of ruined his whole weekend, having one spin. Although I guess no different than having a spin in the middle of a race. But yeah, I thought it was quite fun. I think, like, if this was the format that we had already and that we had for 60 years or, whatever, 10 years, I wouldn't be saying this needs to change. This is awful. Like, we need to shake up the weekend. I'm also not thinking, well, this definitely solves everything about Formula One. I think the things we need to solve Formula One are normally just around just getting them to be able to race a bit closer, really. But it was fun. I don't think it I think it would be a nice addition to do a few times a year, is my conclusion. I don't think it really like solves anything. I don't really think it necessarily adds anything amazing, but I think it was fun. And I think, yeah, I enjoyed it, but I didn't come out with thinking this is the golden thing that will save F1.
No, like the silver bullet to end all its problems, sort of thing.
Silver bullet, that's the word.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, like you said, I think I saw your tweet on that about sort of, if this was the format, I wouldn't be looking to change. I think that's kind of a good way to sum it up. But in terms of tweaking it going forward, I think it felt, obviously it wasn't pointless for the teams, because if it was pointless, they wouldn't have been out on track. But it just felt like FP2 didn't matter. And it just felt like a really weird, we need to put something in that'll do. So I think I would, if they were to do it for Monza, which I think they are still going ahead with, and they have said they are open to tweaking it as they get to each one. So what I'd like to see is FP1 Friday morning, FP2 Friday afternoon, and then qualifying Saturday morning, sprint Saturday afternoon, and then the race on Sunday. But if it was up to me, and I know I'm in the minority with this next line, if it were up to me, you'd qualify on either the Friday night or the Saturday morning, whichever they decide to do. That sets the grid for the race, and then you reverse the top 10 for Saturday, because then it's something completely different, and that mixes the grid up really nicely. I mean, we got a really nicely mixed up grid anyway, and drivers like Alonso gave us a great weekend because of what happened on Saturday in sprint, and he had a really strong result today. So it does work, like you say, Perez, the mistake with the spin, but then you've got Alonso on the other hand who really benefited from it. And actually I think Perez, if he hadn't have had the spin, it's the kind of format that you'd expect him to do well in, because he's always raced better than he has qualified. So I think it's something there for him, but I just think I'd have reversed it. But I know that F1 aren't going to do that. They've said they're not interested in that. They don't want gimmicks. I get that people don't like it, but for me, it was summed up perfectly on Twitter. I'm so sorry if you're listening and it was you that said it, but what we effectively have with this format at the moment as it stands is the first 17 laps of a race, then a planned red flag, and then the continuation of that race. And that isn't what it should be. If you're going to do the sprint, it should be something a little bit different, or even reverse championship order, or just something different. But then you don't want to over-penalise the fastest cars. I know that's the point. Having cars out of position makes for exciting racing as they come through the field, but you don't want to put Hamilton and Bottas and Verstappen and Co at the back, and then Mazepin and Schumacher and Russell and Latifi at the front, because whilst that might sound brilliant, it's faster cars coming through the field could cause more incidents. But also, sorry to get it into this, because it's not just about sport, of course it isn't. From a marketing point of view, you want your best and your fastest drivers somewhere at the front, because they are the ones that, whether people like it or not, draw in the big bucks for the sport, aren't they? So I don't know. It's not, I'm not 100% on it, but I thought I was going to be like proper, again, rose-tinted spectacles. Oh, we shouldn't be doing this in my sport. I don't like change. I thought I was going to be like that about it, but I was a lot more receptive to it. And actually, I quite look forward to it. I was very excited about what we got on Saturday, but I just don't think it didn't take anything away from the weekend. But did it add that much? Is more racing better than more practice? I'd say yes.
I'd say yes. I think maybe the order of the way things are done, or at which point you lock the cars down for park fair, maybe make a bit of a difference. But I think it's a fun change, and definitely something that they could do every so often, or at tracks. I mean, I said, when we sort of came up, I've said maybe we need different qualifying formats at different circuits that sort of suit them better. But I don't know. But I think we will get a more full appreciation of the positives and negatives of it, having seen it across 3 tracks. And I hope they pick tracks that sort of maybe suit it a bit better than this one, because I don't think we saw this weekend that there was much scope for changing positions. There wasn't a lot of overtaking, but maybe if you put it on a track where there was a lot of overtaking, then it gets interesting, because your grid slot is much more vulnerable, and you're going to need to get racy.
But is there a lot of overtaking anyway? Do you know what I mean? I think
yeah.
You've said about the whole silver bullet thing there, but if you have a sprint race, it is just going to be a shortened version of the main race, almost like a warm-up race, because these cars can't follow very well. And, at some tracks, you've got to be like 2+ seconds quicker to get a move done. And that's not always going to be the case. So it's like the cars aren't great at following. The tracks that, I've seen some people say that Silverstone's a terrible track. I don't agree at all that Silverstone's a terrible racetrack. It's not great for Formula One when it comes to close racing and overtaking, but many other series that we see, there's some great action there. So I think it is a very good track. It's just maybe not great for these current crop of F1 cars. But then I think a lot of the calendar's like that at the minute because these cars can't follow. They can't get close enough. And if they can't get close enough, whichever way you look at it, we're never going to have an amazing race. And we rely on safety cars and strategy and tyres falling away and incidents for it to really spice things up. So it's right to trial it because I think if you don't try, you don't know. The problem is they're trying it now. They're going to have to trial it next year because if they look at it and say, oh, it's a little bit inconclusive, is it going to be better with cars that, in theory, on paper, should be able to follow each other and race better, if that makes sense?
Yes. I know. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think my only other idea to change it, which doesn't involve switching around top tens and things and stuff, which I think a lot of people are quite resistant to, even though we see it working quite well in Formula 2 and Formula 3. If the format of the weekend went, practice, qualifying, and then instead of another practice, you then did sprint qualifying, and then you had practice 2 after that, but you open up Parc Fermé rules again after sprint qualifying, so the cars could then be revamped for the race, and maybe they have a run. Maybe the practice allows them to set up for the race. So you have a sort of sprint qualifying setup on the car, and then they can change it for the race, just to kind of mix up how they want to run the cars. They might not do anything differently. They might choose. There may not be any difference in the way they want to set the cars, but that was my thought. And it also makes free practice 2 more meaningful if they're testing out their race format. I guess you'd have to do free practice 2 on a Sunday morning, which would be weird.
Like the old Sunday morning warm-ups.
The old half an hour. Again, put some more on a Sunday as well, I guess. Sundays are quite bare. Yeah,
they can be, can't they? I do feel like a lot of waiting around on a Sunday, whereas you've got support categories, I suppose, but it definitely needs a tweak. I think it is a good baseline. I know there are some people who absolutely loathe it, but I also think there were some people
who were never on board.
Yeah, they were going to loathe it, whatever happened. They've made their decision, and there are people. If people want to be like, that's fine, that's up to them. For me, we gave it a go. I think it was okay. I think it needs a tweak. I'm not sure how it's going to go at Monza. I'm not entirely sure that's going to be much better than Silverstone. If as good, you're probably going to have to rely once again on an Alonso, for example, getting himself out of position and causing some action. And I hope if they do try it, I'm hoping, and it is all hope because from what you read, it doesn't look good. I'm hoping we go to Brazil because I bloody love Interlagos. But I'm hoping they pick maybe the Circuit of the Americas for the third one because I think that's a bit more racy. I think there are more opportunities there. I think actually, one of the better purpose-built ones we have on the track. And I don't want to see it at Jeddah. I don't want to see it at the new, newly designed Abu Dhabi. Perhaps I'm weird with this. I don't know. But I want to see what Jeddah can do with the cars as they are across a normal weekend. And I want to see what a reprofiled Abu Dhabi can do with a normal running order, a normal race weekend, rather than... If you throw in a sprint weekend at Abu Dhabi and it's amazing, is it because the track's better or is it because we had sprint? So somewhere like the Circuit of the Americas, maybe at the second race, if there are going to be 2 there, that would be quite cool. Just to mix up the weekend a little bit, which they probably should have done for Austria, but I think Silverstone paid a lot of money. Quite poetic. First ever F1 race, first ever F1 sprint thing.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I'm totally with Martin Brundle, by the way, on this one. Shock horror, I know. Stop with the sprint. Stop with sprint qualifying. Just call it the sprint race because everyone's calling it the sprint race. It's not detracted from the Sunday as far as I can see. Today was still brilliant and I still tuned in, just excited as ever to the action. So, yeah. I'm sure there'll be some opinions in chat. We'll take some of your questions, unless there's anything else you wanted to add, Stuart, on sprint. I think we all need a bit more time to ponder it and look back and sort of look at what they changed for Monza if they change anything before. I think we're still inconclusive, aren't we? I would say.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it at other places. Have they confirmed Monza for definite, or is that just what was very
I
likely?
thought they had. I
All
thought it
right,
was
well,
Silverstone Monza.
no, we'll check that later. Ross Brawn definitely said they were. I mean, take this with a pinch of salt. He said they're not going to give it to people with the highest bidders. They're definitely going to put it on tracks where you'll get the most meaningful feedback and data. So we'll see, I guess, if it does turn up in Jeddah and Abu Dhabi.
It'll go where the money is. I mean, again, skeptical me, super quickly. It's a trial, guys. We're just going to trial it and see how we go. But first of all, we're going to secure a massive sponsorship deal. And then we're going to come up with loads of branding around it. And we're going to come up with a really cool ceremony afterwards with wreaths and all of this business. I don't believe it's been trialed. I believe that they're going to keep them and they will appear at several races next year. I think some will go to the highest bidder. I think some will go to tracks that are good to race on. Please not Monaco, because it would just fail miserably there. And I think that what they mean by trial is that we're doing this and you tell us what you like and what you don't like and we'll tweak it. But ultimately, this is what we're having at a few races every year. So, but if they're doing that, I think you do it at aside from Monaco, do it at your big events. Make it not a Grand Slam weekend, because it's not the same. I don't think the analogy works there, but that kind of feeling that it's like this weekend at Silverstone, something special, something different, a big historic race, but ideally somewhere where you can actually race as well would be ideal. Thank you very much to JV Santos. Says if the quest is to make drivers go flat out, then why not refueling? If I want to watch a Saturday race, then why not F2 and also get rid of FP3? Yes, get rid of FP3. Hate FP3 and only do FP1, FP2 qualifying and race. I have a big issue with FP3. I think it's the most pointless session of the weekend for a fan. I don't know why. I've always been like that. Rifle, thank you very much, mate. Says, are Bernie sprinklers a bad idea now? Yes. Emily says, poor mods today. Here's £2. Go buy them some biscuits. If they behave and they get out of this union they've got themselves into, I'll think about it. Raz, Toto. Oh, yeah, Toto with the per my last email on radio with FIA Massey. Just go show them yourself, mate. You know where they are. Love the FIA radio during red flag. I do. I mean, I like the FIA team radio anyway, but sending emails in a race and Michael Massey's like, I ain't reading them, mate. I'm busy. That's so weird. I mean, did he send a fax as well?
Well, knowing F1, yeah. Thing is, I do rag on Massey a fair bit because I think, well, we'd have to go into that, but I've had, I felt he's not been as good as Charlie was. But sassy Massey on the radio, I've been loving it. Sassy Massey. I didn't even realize I was going into a rhyme when I started that. But yeah, he's like the sort of beleaguered school teacher. Just stop hitting him. Sit down. I'm trying to direct a race. I'm not looking at my emails. You know where the stewards are. Oh, I love him. In this context only.
Sassy Massey. I get, like a supply teacher. I'm with, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you've got me now, Sassy Massey. I'm so sorry.
I hope we see lots more of Sassy Massey.
Harry the Yeet, thank you very much, mate. He said, it's a racing incident. We know this was bound to happen for a while, but the penalty didn't really ended up penalising Hamilton, and post-race celebrations were a bit hard to digest. We kind of went over that earlier. Hamilton was interviewed, and he said he didn't know. He wasn't told that Verstappen was in hospital. I don't know if the celebrations would have gone ahead or not if he had, but he didn't know he was in hospital apparently. So that's all I can say on that one, unfortunately.
Also, he definitely did get a penalty, even though he still managed to get a win. He did get a penalty. We can't pretend he didn't. I think I've seen that a lot as well. It didn't affect him. It did affect him. He got a 10-second penalty, but he managed to claw it back again.
Yeah.
I think it's still a penalty.
Yeah. No. It's a penalty. And here's my question then, I suppose. If he got a 10-second stop-go penalty, but still won the race, are we then having the same argument? Are we in a position? I don't necessarily mean you, Harrinder Yeats, at all. But when you look at social media, what are we saying? Are we saying that if he be, there's some people out there who are not going to be happy unless he was disqualified? Because if it's a 10-second stop-go penalty, but he still wins, is that enough? Are we then going to say, well, he still won the race, so it's not enough for penalty? There's got to be a line, hasn't there?
It's tricky, and I know it feels frustrating when someone gets a penalty and it's not enough of a penalty to stop them from still winning. But Hamilton had to overcome a time penalty to still get that win. And, we can argue, and we already have done, whether it was enough or not. But also, if you watch Sky, you'll know about this particular race. But Jenson Button's most celebrated victory at Canada came after he got at least one penalty, I think. The Canada
6 times, hadn't he?
Yeah, like he was he got penalised for hitting Fernando. He all kinds of stuff went on, and he still won despite that. And that is celebrated rather than decried for being unfair. I don't know. I think you don't know in advance when you're giving the penalty whether it's enough to stop someone winning either.
I said in the pinned comment as well, I get why people are frustrated and annoyed, and Verstappen fans are going to be livid today. And I kind of made the point tongue in cheek on Twitter. Had this have been, in fact, I know. I'll give you an example. Giancarlo Fisichella hitting Michael Schumacher at Hockenheim. I watch that now. Schumacher doesn't need to come across like that. He's not innocent in that. At the time, Fisichella was pure evil. Poor Fisichella, bless him. The incidents that I get that as a Schumacher fanboy growing up, that when your favourite driver's been hard done to or something like that happens, you're really angry and you can't contain that, which again is why I'm so glad Twitter wasn't a thing. I'd have been one of these massive fanboys on there. But at the same time, you sort of have to think, well, he's been penalised. I don't think it was enough, but then sort of ask yourself what would have been enough. And if we start throwing drivers out of races for that because it affects the championship, that's we've got a dangerous precedent anyway from the FIA historically. Let's not get into that. But if they start throwing people out of races for that kind of thing, then you've got a precedent. And where'd you go? Drivers aren't going to race.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to be a steward. I've said it so many times. I do not want to be a race steward. I would hate it. Mary actually just asking, has Sprint at Monza actually been confirmed? I'll double check that and I'll pop something on Twitter. I thought it had. It might be one of those things, one of F1's worst kept secrets kind of things, where everyone kind of already knows, but it's not been officially announced. So I will pop something on Twitter for that. So apologies if I've got people's hopes up in Italy there. I didn't mean to. That was just what I thought. Zach says, well, what if Max just hits Lewis now? Well, again, stewards have set themselves a precedent, haven't they? So if Max does that to Lewis, that's a 10-second penalty. But it's also about context. If Max Verstappen is steering, they have an accident like that, 10-second penalty. If he hacks the wheel towards Hamilton's deliberately wiping out, and you can see, it's very easy to see when a driver swings their wheel to the left. If Hamilton had turned his wheel left today and hit Verstappen, you could argue that was deliberate. Whatever. If he does it deliberately, then you're looking at black flags and things like that. But in an incident, it's a penalty. But it would be interesting to see if we have a similar incident, if the penalties do go the same way. Okay, I keep giving these guys a chat for questions, but I'm going to ask you this super quickly, Stuart, because it's something I often ponder. Do you think, since we sadly lost Charlie Whiting, the FIA paid too much attention to what the fan base says? The reaction on socials, or the reaction around the fans at racetracks? Because I feel like I worry they're trying to please people, and that we're going to end up in a situation where Hamilton gets a 10-second penalty, people say it's not enough, and then if that happens with Verstappen and Verstappen does it and he gets a stop-go penalty, that's going to cause chaos. And I worry that they're trying to appease fans rather than, as Charlie would do, go, nope, that's an incident, penalty, that's a penalty, that's not, that is. And he was a lot more, I don't know, maybe not the fans, maybe he's trying to appease the teams, because the teams, like you say, do seem to treat him like poor Sassy Massey, like a supply teacher, don't they?
So I don't know. I don't really have an opinion of this in relation to Charlie Whiting versus Michael Massey era, but I have definitely noticed that the powers that be it FOM or FIA, just do seem to be kind of, it feels like they are reacting more to what fans are saying. And obviously we're living at a time now where you can very viscerally hear what the fans are saying constantly. You're constantly getting feedback from social media and all kinds. It's not like even 10 years. Sorry, someone's carring their way along outside. It's not like even 10 years ago where you just didn't really have a sense, apart from when you did your annual fan surveys, which I don't know if they still do. And I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do. I think they will say that they're doing it based on like pure data and stuff. And I assume that a lot of it is that, like, that their decisions are made on the facts. But I think a lot of their investigating of the facts and a lot of their impetus is driven by like, everyone's mad on Twitter. What do we need to think about this? And that's not necessarily a good thing because everyone's always mad on Twitter.
Yeah, good point, actually. If they are listening to social media, then they'll never be consistent, and they're not, so maybe they are. DJ Red Raven kind of making a point that I made there about supply teacher says, I don't think that necessarily. I think that Michael Massey simply isn't as robust or respected as Whiting, and he has only himself to blame for that one, in my opinion. So there we go. I'll tell you what, I'm going to pick out 3 or 4 questions, and we're going to do them quick fire, Stuart. I know both of us like a good waffle, so this could be quite tricky. What is quick fire for us? An hour?
Yeah, about an hour, yeah.
So let's have a look and see if we've got... Jamie Santos says they're doing 3, aren't they? So 2 left. Yes, they're doing 3 this season. Rumoured or confirmed or whatever. Monza, not 100% sure yet. And was supposed to be Brazil, but looks set to be one of the races in America is the latest rumour on that one. Hopefully COTA. Hopefully. Is this the day Red Bull lost to constructors, says Channel F1 News?
Say that again?
Is this the day Red Bull lost to constructors?
No. I think they're still very strong. I think it's a very bad day for them, but I still think they're very strong.
Mario Kovac says, bring back spare car, ? I actually thought when the red flag came out, I thought in the old days they'd be sprinting back to, well, Max maybe not, because he was injured, very badly shaken up, wasn't he? But sprinting back to the pits to hop in the spare car to get out there. But cost caps and things like that, I don't think that will happen, Mario. But it would certainly, I don't know, I don't want to say spice things up, but we'd have kept Max in the race had he not been injured or shaken up like that, obviously. But obviously, like I say,
yeah, it costs too much.
The cost cap, isn't it? Raoul says, is this Max's Germany? Obviously referring to Sebastian Vettel, Hockenheim. It certainly feels like a turning point, doesn't it? And I think Crofty summed it up quite nicely, Stuart, in that it's like a reset now. We're kind of back to where we were at the start of the season.
Yeah, I mean, well, there are a couple of things to that. I mean, going into this race, especially after that sprint race where Verstappen got the lead, we were going in. Max had a 33-point lead. Red Bull had won 4 races on the trot. It really felt like if Mercedes didn't get a hold of this race weekend, then the title is kind of not done, but like it felt very much like almost 2 feet in Red Bull's camp. Now, Vettel at Germany, that was his fault. That was him throwing it away, and I think that did things to him psychologically. I can't guarantee that, but it just felt like it just turned him around completely from a really good run of results. Whereas this one, I think he won't think of it as his fault. He won't think he threw it away. I think he knows now. What it might change is the dynamic between them, the two of them, because I think they've been pretty good so far. They've had a lot of respect for each other. They're fighting hard, and I think now this is maybe more like, I was going to say like Spain 2016 with Rosberg and Hamilton, but I think they'd fallen out.
Yeah, that
with each other well before then. But you know what I mean? They started off as friends and respectful, and just, it's what a title fight does to you. Then you start to like get suspicious of each other and angry, and I think that it might change the dynamic between how we see them go racing now. And I think, I think they will learn nothing from today. I think they'll leave each other less room and be very much like, claiming corners, even though they're a millimeters apart in terms of who's ahead. Hopefully not. Like what 2016, we saw Hamilton and Rosberg run into each other about 4 times, and I don't think I want to see that. I want to see sticking with the clean racing. So hopefully that's what we'll get.
Zach Morgan sums it up nicely with gloves are off. That's where we're at, aren't we? That's it now. Max is not gonna if Max is on the inside of a corner like that next time, he's not backing out of that. And nor should he. I don't want to see drivers massive accidents and risk drivers getting hurt, but it's hard racing and they're both aggressive drivers. We said at the start, it's been coming since Imola. I think I said that to you in DMs, Stuart, when we were chatting just briefly earlier. I think it's been coming since Imola, this one. So yeah, a couple more super quickly and then one to finish off on. Yes or no, pineapple on pizza, says Mario. Yes for me.
No for me, but only because I don't like pineapple full stop. So, no.
Fair enough. Cookies or ice cream? That was one that keeps cropping up. Ice cream for me.
I mean, today, ice cream.
Anything with ice in it. And I just saw one. I'm not going to find it now, am I? Because I need it. I think it was Davidus asking if we'll see the German Grand Prix back at any point. I think we will. Just super quickly, I think we will. It's yeah.
I think they were flirting with an idea of a semi-rotating few races. So if they do that, I think Germany will be part of that.
I think so, and I think Nürburgring showed they can still host quite nicely, and I'd be. Yeah. That's where I'm at with it.
Good thought.
Yeah, I think it will. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. And we'll leave it at that, Davidus. I hope that was really helpful and really insightful for you. Yeah, we'll wrap it up there then, Stuart. Thank you so much for popping on, mate. I know it's hot today, very hot, but it was good to chat. And hopefully, with a reset button now, we're going to have just as brilliant a race in Hungary, and hopefully for the rest of this season. It's looking good, shaping up nicely.
Yeah, I think mentally for Hamilton, this shrinking that points gap so much will put him in a different mentality. It no longer looks out of reach. It looks like he can grab hold of this championship, which I think is only good for us. Oh, look, he's just arrived. Jonty. Hi, Jonty. We're leaving now.
Yeah, we're off now. God, keep up, mate. Yeah, it was good to chat to you again, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon, mate.
Yeah, cheers. I'll catch you soon.
Yep. Bye. Thank you to Stuart. Thank you to you guys as well for popping along. I was just checking the stream there. Please do drop a like. Some salty, bitchy moaners have been disliking the stream like crazy for one of these. Please do drop a like. Obviously, 500 for Charles, and massively appreciate if we get some more. Thank you to everyone who's been respectful in the chat, especially to mods. Like I say, they do it for free so that we can have these streams. I know it's a contentious topic, and we're all going to have opinions, but, you know, I just know the most of us are decent with it, so thank you so much for that. Please do drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well if you are new too. Like I said, might do a stream on Wednesday, just waiting to hear back on that one. I'll confirm on the old socials. There'll be video or two this week as well, and then of course we're gearing up to Hungary, and then it's the summer break, so enjoy Hungary. I know it's tough sometimes. I know it's really, really tough sometimes to enjoy Hungary, but please try to. We've had a couple of good races there lately, though, so it's not absolutely horrific. I'd still go back to 2019. That relentless pace of Hamilton and Verstappen was fantastic. Loved that race, so yeah. Looking forward to it as much as I will. And then it's Belgium. I'm looking forward to Zandvoort. I think the atmosphere there is going to be insane. Onto Monza, maybe the second set of sprint qualifying as well, but it is flat out then until Christmas. So yeah, I'm going to go and get a drink and cool off. And again, lovely image, but I'm going to have to go and change my t-shirt. I'm absolutely drippy. It's been a pleasure as always. Like I said, don't forget to drop a like. Would be massively appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe as well. You can follow me over on social media. Links to all of those are in the description down below, as well as Stuart's channel. I know most of you probably follow him already, but thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.